What's up, Miseducation listeners? We're kicking off a brand new season of episodes that we've been working hard at for the past several months, and we can't wait to share them with you.
This guy right here, my co-host, is Sultan Martins, a senior at Midwood High School and one of the funniest people I know.
And that's my co-host, Yasmin Chokrain, a junior at Stuyvesant High School and the heart of the podcast.
Aww. Let's go back to March for a moment. The Miseducation podcast team is having an editorial meeting. We're sitting around a conference room table, sharing all sorts of ideas for what this season would focus on.
The suspensions, and that goes into mental health, and that goes into the perfect student.
I remember that. We wanted to discuss a range of unexplored issues, the effects of punitive discipline, high-stakes testing, etc.
And we wanted to talk to students who had had first-hand experience in schools that handle these issues differently.
And that's what led to the aha moment. Most high school students spend all 4 years at the same school. That's all they know. No basis for comparison. But New York has a special system of high schools called transfer schools, where students who have not been successful at their previous schools can get a fresh start.
We thought that if we talked to transfer school students, we could learn a lot about where the rest of the system is falling short, and what transfer schools are doing differently to help students succeed.
To kick off this season with our first story, we're passing it to our fellow intern, Zoe Markman.
Hey Sultan. Hey Yasmin.
So Zoe, I feel like you're the perfect person for this episode because it includes a history lesson. You love history, don't you?
Yeah, I think history is pretty cool.
How does that relate to your interest in journalism?
Well, one of my favorite historical figures is Nellie Bly, an investigative journalist from the late 19th century.
All right, young Nellie, enough already with the small talk. Take it away.
It's summer. My producer Taylor and I are sitting in a car parked on a tree-lined street in Brooklyn, AC blaring.
I went to St. Agatha, which was like a private Catholic school in Sunset Park for a while. I got expelled.
This is Steph. She's in her 20s now. We're sitting in her car.
Then I got sent to the middle school down the block from me, which was Sunset Park Prep. But I got expelled and sent to like a really, I don't even know what you would call it, like a 600 school for like kids with behavioral issues. Security guards would literally pat you down as well as metal detect you before walking into every room. You couldn't go to the bathroom by yourself. They would literally search your folders and the linings of your backpacks for drugs and weapons. It was basically prison. Like the kids would fight the security guards. Like I saw full out brawls.
If you're curious why Steph got expelled, she said she'd rather not get into the specifics, but she did say this.
I did have a lot of behavioral issues as a kid. I was like really violent. I acted out a lot. I guess it's something that you age out of, right? Like everyone has like that teen angst, and I guess mine started a little earlier, like 8-year-old angst.
Because New York City has a very competitive high school admissions process, Steph's rocky middle school years limited the range of high schools she could get into.
My grades in middle school were so bad. Again, my standardized tests were like through the roof. Like I was like a child genius, right? But like you looked at my attendance and my grades and you're like, we can't do anything with this kid. So the schools that I applied to for high school were basically like, no.
Eventually, Steph got matched with a small high school for aspiring artists in downtown Brooklyn.
And I ended up doing literally nothing all day but playing guitar in the hallway and like cutting class and like going to Barnes & Noble and just like being a, truant dropout. And then I like basically had an epiphany one day and I was like, maybe I'll stop.
Quick warning, you're about to hear a curse word.
But by then my guidance counselor was like, nah, it's too late, you're already fucked. Like even if you did every single thing you wanted to do and like passed every single class from here on out, you still wouldn't graduate until you were 21, and by then you'd age out. And so I was like, okay, what do I do?
There are lots of students like Steph in New York City. Students whose educational path is not linear. Students who might be referred to as at risk or off track. In a school system of 1.1 million students, there are bound to be thousands of Stephs each year. What does the city do to support them? To answer that question, I have to tell you another story. And don't worry, we will get back to Steph. This story takes us back about 18 years. It's New Year's Day, 2002. Despite the cold, crowds of people are gathered in front of City Hall. Bette Midler is there to sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see?
And I was not yet born. It's been less than 4 months since the 9/11 attacks, and New York City, still in recovery, has just elected a new mayor, billionaire
Michael R. Bloomberg.
For the past 3 decades, power in the New York City school system has been decentralized in the hands of 32 autonomous community education councils. That's all about to change.
Without authority, there is no accountability. The public, through the mayor, must control the school system.
Soon after Bloomberg enters office, the state legislature grants him unilateral control of the city's school system, and Bloomberg takes full advantage. One of his big goals, increasing the city's dismal graduation rates. A 2006 study found that 140,000 students in New York City had either dropped out of high school or weren't on track to graduate. This population was greater than the entire Boston public school system. Bloomberg and his friends in Big Philanthropy had a theory that students were slipping through the cracks because the schools were too large for the staff to keep up with every student. So the city launched an aggressive, controversial campaign to shut down many of the low-performing large high schools and replace them with new, smaller schools, like the school Steph attended. If the new small schools were designed to improve graduation rates long-term, Bloomberg also had to do something about the students who had already dropped out, or were on the verge of dropping out, students like Steph. Addressing that challenge led him to Good Shepherd Services, a citywide nonprofit that supports marginalized youth.
In 1980, we were asked by the Department of Ed to work with young people who weren't attending our local community school, which at that point was John Jay. It was a real dropout factory.
This is Sister Paulette LaMonaco, longtime executive director of Good Shepherd. I'm sitting with her and her colleague, Rachel Forsyth. The two of them became critical partners in the effort to reduce dropouts. John Jay in Park Slope, Brooklyn, was one of those large high schools that would later get chopped up into a bunch of smaller high schools during Bloomberg's tenure.
We looked at the LTA lists,
The
long-term absentee lists, and found that a lot of the young people who should have been in school and weren't going were coming from Red Hook.
Red Hook, in southwest Brooklyn at that time, was a major hub in the crack cocaine trade. In the 90s, Life magazine called it the crack capital of America. Good Shepherd knew that they had to find a way to re-engage the teenagers there who had stopped going to school.
So we found space in the basement of public housing, and we started this small school with the Department of Ed giving us 3 teachers and we providing whatever else was needed. The administration, the social and emotional supports, the program directorship, and that's how it started.
They called it South Brooklyn Community High School.
The early days were tough. We were in the basement of the Red Hook houses. At the beginning, people didn't know why we were there. We would be broken into, computers would disappear over a long weekend.
But then, fast forward to 2004, Bloomberg's first term.
The Department of Ed was interested and worried about the high numbers of dropouts. The Gates Foundation was interested in helping to support the city of New York in doing something for high school dropouts, and we already had a model.
South Brooklyn Community High School was showing lots of promise, so the Gates Foundation and the Department of Education teamed up to spread the model across the city. They coined the term transfer high schools. In order to be admitted into a transfer school, students had to be overage for their grade and behind on credits.
The thing they have in common is that school's been a place of failure and stress and anxiety.
This is Rachel talking now.
And our job is to really re-engage those students in their education and welcome them back in and make school to be an accessible, friendly, resourceful place.
Cultivating a safe place for learning was key. Counselors from Good Shepherd were not just an add-on at South Brooklyn Community High. They were central to the design of the school.
A lot of the kids, they're coming in with their defenses up. In a lot of the areas that they're from, their defenses have to be up because they're coming from neighborhoods that's stricken with poverty and violence.
This is Trey. He was one of the first graduates of South Brooklyn Community High School and now works at another transfer high school.
Even just speaking for myself, going to the public school, high school that I was in before South Brooklyn, I'm I'm still in survival mode in school. There's still danger in school. There's still things that I have to worry about besides my schoolwork in school. So when that piece is there, you can't expect a kid not to be distracted. You know, when you set a tone of, all right, we're not just treating you like a number. Who are you? We want to get to know you. This is a place where you can be yourself, and this is a safe space. Once you're put at ease, now it's like, all right, now I can get to business. Now I can learn.
This was Mayor Bloomberg's theory. Make schools smaller, focus on relationships, and students will stay. There are criticisms of the small schools movement, which I don't have time to get into now, but the reform did boost graduation rates. In 2002, the city's graduation rate hovered around 50%, and when Bloomberg left office in 2013, it hit 71%. South Brooklyn Community High School laid the foundation for what has become a network of 51 transfer high schools, serving approximately 13,000 students in neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs.
I actually had a community leader come to me and say that if you're bringing these young people in, if you're opening this school, you're going to bring down the community. And years later, after the flood,
After Hurricane Sandy,
we had like a celebratory dinner in Red Hook, and he came just to apologize and to say how wrong he was.
So how does all this tie into Steph's story? We'll let you know after a short break.
I'm Adrian Uribarri, co-founder of The Bell, which produces Miseducation. Our goal was to create a platform for students to tell real stories about how education issues affect them. Our listeners have made that possible, so we want to thank you for your financial support. And if you're listening for the first time, we want to thank you too. If you like what you hear, consider a tax-deductible donation to The Bell. Visit bellvoices.org/donate and tell your friends.
Hey, Miseducation fans. My name is Mark Winston Griffith.
And I'm Max Friedman, and we're the hosts of School Colors.
School Colors is a podcast from Brooklyn Deep about how race, class, and power shape American cities and schools. We tell the story of generations of struggle for quality schools in central Brooklyn.
If you're into Miseducation and you want to understand where we are and how we got here, you won't want to miss School Colors. You can listen to all 8 episodes right now on any podcast app or at schoolcolorspodcast.com.
Peace.
Now, let's return to Steph's story. Remember when her counselor informed her that she wouldn't graduate before she was 21?
The math teacher at that high school overheard my situation where my guidance counselor was useless, and he was like, hey, Steph, I used to teach at this school called South Brooklyn. You know, they could probably help you, blah, 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 blah. Ironically, I'd sat in his classroom maybe twice, right? Like, I didn't know him. If he weren't listening in and didn't recommend that school, I don't know where I'd be, right? Because, like, the guidance counselor told me that was it. So what if I never went to a transfer school? What if I, like, literally, if he wasn't listening, I don't know. Like, that's really wild to think about.
Steph transferred to South Brooklyn Community High School, the school Good Shepherd founded, and got to work. By the time Steph got there, South Brooklyn had moved out of the Red Hook houses into an official school building. In order to graduate on time, Steph would have to make up all those credits that she had missed while playing guitar in the hallway and skipping class.
And they tell you straight up, like, this is an accelerated high school, which means if you miss a class, it's like missing a week, you know, because we have to ramp everything up so quickly. So they were like, if you're not committed, you know, this isn't going to work for you.
Steph echoed the importance of South Brooklyn's partnership with Good Shepherd.
All your educational foundational core New York State needs are being met by South Brooklyn, but all of your emotional development as well as your guidance was overseen by a counselor from Good Shepherd Services.
She recalled the school having about 5 guidance counselors, each assigned to a caseload of 30 to 35 students. To give you perspective, the average guidance counselor in New York City has a caseload of about 400 students.
That became like your person. And for some people, that meant just to check in once a week to see how you're doing. And for other people, that meant like, that became like their emotional crutch and like their second mother.
Steph only used her counselor for checking in, but Steph said she really helped her stay in school and on track. Steph also had a dedicated college advisor.
And he was your like encyclopedia of all things college and university, Like, I remember he personally drove me and my mom to SUNY Purchase and New Paltz for my interviews.
SUNY stands for State Universities of New York.
Because, we couldn't get there. Like, if you don't have a car and you want to go to a SUNY, but you have an admissions interview, how are you, these are low-income kids, right? Like, how are you going to do that? So he personally took his minivan and drove me and my mom up.
Perhaps the most transformative aspect of the school for Steph was the Learning to Work program, another core tenet of transfer schools, which places students in paid internships. Here's Steph talking about her Learning to Work advisor, Dave.
Dave was like, all right, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? And I was like, you can't ask a 16-year-old, like, what do you want to do? Like, I don't know, like, go home and watch TV. Like, can I get paid for that?
Steph had been obsessed with cameras and filming since age 8. So when Dave was thinking of internship opportunities for Steph, video production came to mind.
I remember him being like, you're always videotaping everything. Like, do you want to do that? And I was like, what am I going to do with that? What do you mean? Like, you going to pay me to do that? Because sure.
The paid internship would provide career training and a source of income. Plus, since keeping up her grades was a prerequisite, the Learning to Work program provided academic incentive. Steph got an internship with City Parks Production, rose to the role of supervisor, and then got hired as a production lead after her internship was over. And when she graduated from South Brooklyn, she had real work experience under her belt, which helped her get accepted to Columbia College in Chicago to study film.
And I'm like living in the bougie South Loop. You can never have a conversation that's not intellectual. You can go up to anyone on any corner and like talk for hours. And like I'm in this intellectual bubble of like a young kid in college, right? Totally removed from the poverty that I grew up in. And then I go home for the summer and it's like boom, smack. Oh, sorry. It's like boom, smack. Like here you are. Like this is where you came from. Like don't forget like the friends that you left 2 years ago are still in the same spot. She's working at a laundromat. She's struggling to pay bills. She never got to graduate, blah, blah, blah. And it's really like, you feel kind of like an imposter or like guilty in a way.
One friend in particular, a girl who had grown up with Steph in Sunset Park and later moved to New Jersey, gave her something to think about.
We caught up for the first time that summer in like, I don't know how long. And she told me that she was joining the military. And I was like, why the hell are you going to join the military? You're like the softest little, like, you, like, this is illogical. And she was like, I have no other option. Like, I'm not going to graduate. And my mom was like, I'm not going to support a dropout. So, blah, blah, blah. This is my only option. And I was like, it's not your only option. Like, why haven't you looked into transfer schools or like GED programs or like YABC or anything like this? I listed off all the options that were relevant to me. And she was like, I live in New Jersey, Steph. I don't have any of those. And, like, it ticked in my brain. I was like, oh, shit. Like, I never realized that all these programs were localized to New York City. Like, this is something I assumed. Like, oh, every state has to have at least one, right? But, like, no, not at all. And that's when I realized that this was a problem. And we wanted to get the word out.
Steph decided to spend the following summer making a documentary about South Brooklyn Community High School. She called 2 of her best friends from film school to see if they'd help her.
Gave them the pitch, and I was like, it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be fun. Like, we're basically all going to have to sleep in my bedroom in New York all summer. It's going to be rough, and no one's going to get paid, and we have to hope my mom can feed us all every night with whatever she cooks. And, like, everyone was like, yeah, let's do it.
The film followed 6 students trying to graduate from South Brooklyn.
I was working full-time at Coney Island in amusement park, and I would, like, come home from working a double shift and then, like, work on the dock with them, and then, like, on my one day off, we would go to film. And, yeah, it was a really exhausting summer.
Steph titled this film, Dream Factories. This is the trailer.
Kids get treated like shit by most of the adults in their lives for most of the time that they're growing up. And then we're surprised that they don't trust us. Like, of course they don't trust us.
I had no expectations of myself. I didn't believe in myself. I really thought at this point that I was never going to be nothing.
The teachers did not care. They're sitting with 50 students. They don't care about you and they don't pay attention to you.
The population was so huge. I was lost in the system the first week I got in there.
I sat in a class where the teacher told me, he's like, I don't care if you learn a lot, I'm still getting my paycheck.
I came to this school and, I learned that, there's other options, you don't have to give up.
Regular schools, they would never care as much as these teachers.
Sadly, it was one of those things that, like, fell into, like, the abyss. Like, we were like, what do we do now?
Steph and her friends didn't have the money to promote and distribute the film.
But we made it, and the people who it was directly for were influenced by it, right? So, like, it wasn't a total fail, but it was like adult hit us right in the face. It's like, cool, you're graduated from college. Here's your first student loan bill. And I was like, oh, shit. So that's basically that was my first and last passion project, because I realized that, like, you need money to have passion.
When you talk to Sister Paulette and Rachel from Good Shepherd and you listen to Steph tell her story, the importance of transfer schools seems obvious, but not everyone is convinced. Over the years, South Brooklyn and other transfer schools have been at risk of closure because their graduation and attendance numbers hover below city averages. But it's important to remember that these schools are exclusively serving students who are not on track to graduate from their previous schools. Holding them up to the same standards as traditional high schools just doesn't make sense. In 2017, Rachel, from Good Shepherd, called Steph,
asking me if I could, like, urgently make it to a town hall meeting that night, or, like, the next night, because South Brooklyn was at risk.
Steph testified at a hearing, arguing that the school be kept open. She spoke of how attending a transfer high school put her on a path to college graduation and starting a production studio.
One of the local papers, like quoted my 45-second, like, plea and spun it in a way of, like successful alumni who just recently, like, I don't know, I was really pissed off about it. I was like, that's not at all what I went there for. Like, I'm white and my dad makes, a decent income. My two parents were together. I have a lot going for me. All of my circumstances were completely self-inflicted, right? I cut class. I fucked up. I had emotional issues. I wasn't forced to raise my little brother. I wasn't put in, like, some really messed up circumstances. But there were also people who came from a lot less than me who accomplished just as much as me, and you chose to highlight me. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
This is the message that Steph wanted to leave us with, that we don't always hear about who she considers to be the real heroes. In Steph's eyes, the success stories are the people giving back to their communities, the people working in transfer schools, people like Rachel, Trey, and Sister Paulette. After talking to them, they've convinced me that transfer schools and the students who go there have a lot to teach us.
So, Yasmin, what did you think of the story?
It was enlightening. I didn't realize how much I didn't know about transfer schools.
Well, the good news is, this whole season is about transfer schools.
We spent months at one transfer school in particular, James Baldwin High School in Manhattan, where we got to know students and staff whose stories we cannot wait to share with you.
So make sure you're subscribed to Miseducation on your podcast app so you never miss an episode.
And for behind-the-scenes content, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MiseducationPod.
This episode was written and reported by Zoe Markman, edited by Sarah Garland, and produced by Taylor McGraw. Original music is from the students at Building Beats, which you can learn about more in the show notes.
Miseducation is a program of the Bell in partnership with the Hechinger Report. Big thanks to the Pinkerton Foundation, the Summerfield Foundation, and FJC.
We'll be back soon with episode 2, and until then, stay educated.